All right, welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right into a source video that unpacks a huge, fast-moving crisis in the Persian Gulf. There's a lot going on here, so let's break it down.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start at the very center of the conflict, the Strait of Hormuz. Then we'll look at the economic fallout, the money side of things. After that, we'll get into the military escalations, what's being said back in Washington, and finally, zoom out to see the global ripple effects. It's a big picture. Okay, first up, let's really zero in on the geographical heart of this whole thing, the Strait of Hormuz.
So the source video really hammers this point home. They call the strait a 21-mile wide bottleneck. And you gotta understand, this one tiny stretch of water, it's the critical choke point for a huge chunk of the world's oil. It is the flashpoint.
Now, according to the source, the U.S. president tried to calm the markets with a pretty interesting move. There was this big announcement about a multinational coalition to secure the strait. But here's the thing. It was announced to the Wall Street Journal right before the futures markets opened. The source points out that while the timing was strategic, the details were super vague. Like, who was actually in this coalition? And this is where that vagueness starts to make sense. The source video lists a whole bunch of key allies. We're talking France, the UK, Japan, Germany, who apparently said no thanks or just didn't commit. So right away you have to ask, how strong is this coalition really?
And get this, the rhetoric around this crisis got wild. The source pulls up this social media post from a pretty big supporter of the administration. He basically suggested, hey, why not just use a dozen thermonuclear detonations to blast a whole new canal? I mean, wow. It just goes to show how heated the conversation was getting. Okay, so from the political to the financial, let's look at the economic fallout. Because, as the source makes clear, the impact on global markets was immediate.
And I mean immediate. The energy markets reacted instantly. The video reports that right after the events of that weekend, U.S. oil prices shot up, opening at over $102 a barrel, a huge jump.
And for Brent oil, which is the big international benchmark, the source says it surged by more than $16 a barrel. They tie this spike directly to the military actions that happened just before. But it's not just about gas prices, right? This is where you see the domino effect. The source connects that energy price hike to huge problems in agriculture. Think fertilizer supplies getting disrupted because they're linked to gas prices. And what does that lead to? Warnings about food getting more expensive and, as the source puts it, massive inflation. So the economic picture is pretty grim, but beyond the markets, the source also gets into the military side of things, showing how the conflict was starting to spread. The video points to a really big potential escalation here. It cites reports that Israel's government was getting ready to approve a massive increase in its number of reservists, from 280,000 all the way up to 450,000. That's a huge jump, and it was reportedly for potential operations in Lebanon. Now, at the same time all this is happening, the source presents a really sharp contrast. It plays a quote from the U.S. president, who claimed total victory, saying the U.S. had beaten and completely decimated Iran. But did that claim hold up? The video immediately pushes back, listing a series of ongoing military actions that Iran was allegedly still carrying out. We're talking drone strikes, missile attacks on Bahrain and other Gulf nations. Plus, Iran's foreign minister was apparently rejecting any talk of a ceasefire. So, decimated might have been a strong word. So, with all that chaos unfolding, how was it playing back in Washington? Well, the source shifts focus to that. And let's just say, not everyone was impressed. First, we hear from Pete Buttigieg. The source quotes him calling the whole situation amateur hour at the White House and Pentagon. His main point? That they should have seen this coming and had a plan for obvious consequences, like the strait getting shut down. Then there's Adam Schiff, who really hones in on the money. He wanted to talk about the cost of the war, and he put a shocking price tag on just the first 6 days. And here it is, $11 billion in less than a week. The source really uses this number to make you stop and think about the sheer scale of the financial burn. And to put that huge number into perspective, Schiff does some quick math. He says that $11 billion could have paid for about 110 brand new hospitals. It's a powerful way to frame it, basically saying, look what we could have had at home. And finally, the source brings in Rogue Hannah, who makes the argument that regular people, well, they aren't thinking about a war halfway across the world.
He says they're worried about jobs, healthcare, and paying their bills, not spending $2 billion a day on another conflict. All right, for our final section, the analysis zooms out. Because the big point the source makes is that this isn't just a Middle East problem. This thing has global ripple effects. So the source asks a really important question. Is this conflict actually contained? And the answer it gives is a pretty clear no. It points out that while everyone's eyes are on the Gulf, other things are happening in other key spots around the world. For example, the source cites a major buildup of Chinese military forces near Taiwan. It mentions North Korea testing more missiles. And crucially, it points out that U.S. troops are being pulled out of Asia to deal with the Gulf crisis. The argument here is that this one conflict is creating vulnerabilities everywhere else. And this is the final chilling thought the source leaves us with. It asks, what happens if Iran's proxies decide to close the Red Sea next? Think about that. A second major shipping lane choked off. The video speculates that could send oil prices soaring past $200 a barrel, and it just leaves you wondering, what would happen then?